Court with the Center for the Study of Social Policy, and welcome to today's Get Real webinar. Before we start the webinar, just a few reminders. If you're calling in from outside, please try not to use a speakerphone if you're using a landline, and we definitely ask you don't use cellular phones or cordless phones if possible, because sometimes that causes problems with background noise. If you are having a sound quality issue, sometimes if you hang up and call back in, you can resolve that. This webinar is going to be recorded, and as always, we will send out the link to everyone afterwards, and also it'll be posted on our website. During the webinar, please submit questions as they come forward using the question function, the chat function on the control panel. And after the webinar, you will receive a follow-up email with a request to fill out a brief survey, and if you can, we appreciate it. It's always good to know what you thought about the webinar, any ideas you have for future webinars. So today, I'd like to introduce Mary Ann Berg from the Indian Oaks Academy, which is part of a Nexus family of treatment programs providing residential treatment for male and female adolescents with emotional and behavioral problems. Mary Ann began working at the Academy in July of 2005 as clinical supervisor for the developmentally delayed male juvenile sex offender program, and in 2006 she became clinical director of the Academy. She has a contagious passion for working with youth, and in 2010, along with two of her colleagues, Mary Ann started Project Rainbow at Indian Oaks Academy. Project Rainbow became a powerful influence at Indian Oaks Academy, and you'll hear about that today. Mary Ann was promoted to Associate Director of Indian Oaks Academy, which she is the position she currently holds. Her career, in addition to Indian Oaks Academy, includes a supervisor and manager working for a homeless shelter, a family services agency in Naperville, Illinois, and managing inpatient adolescent psychiatric units at Riverside Medical Center in Kankakee, Illinois. She holds a Master's of Social Work degree with a minor in psychology from the George Williams College of Social Work at Aurora University. Welcome, Mary Ann.
Thank you, Bill. Hello, everybody. First, I'd like to thank Bill and his team at the Get Real Network for giving Indian Oaks Academy an opportunity to share our journey of making residential treatment a safer place for LGBTQ youth. It's an honor to be asked to share our story with you all. A little bit about today's webinar. I will first share with you Indian Oaks Academy's demographics, so you will have a larger context of the type of residential treatment facility that we are. I will then share the steps that we took to change the culture of our campus to become more open, accepting, and safer for LGBTQ youth. There were several lessons learned through this process. Some lessons were tough to learn, and others were a little bit easier to learn. No matter what, though, each lesson made us stronger, and it made a safer place for all of our kids. Lastly, Indian Oaks Academy, or IOA, as I'll refer to it, is a very transparent agency. So we're willing to share with you any of the resources we talk about in today's webinar. When working to make a safer place for LGBTQ youth, we understand the challenges and the limited resources that are out there to use as a guide. So if there's anything that I say that people would like more knowledge on or a copy of, know that we're transparent and we're willing to share. So we hope after today's webinar, you have a few more tools to help make it a better place for LGBTQ youth. A little bit about Nexus, or Indian Oaks Academy. Our parent company is Nexus, and it is located in the Twin Cities in Minnesota. We operate 5 residential treatment sites, 2 in Minnesota, 2 in Illinois, and 1 in Maryland. And each site offers specialized treatment options for youth. IOA is a residential treatment facility located in Manteno, Illinois. We work with boys and girls ages 12 to 21. We are not a locked facility, but rather what we call staff secured. So when our kids go on run, we go on run with them. IOA specializes in working with youth who have harmful sexual behaviors, including severe emotional or behavioral problems, inpatient psychiatric care, sexuality, family, and trauma work. IOA has been in existence for over 20 years. We are currently employ about 350 staff. Nexus mission statement is strengthening lives, families, and communities through our cornerstone values. And our cornerstone values are honesty, responsibility, care and concern, and courage. With these values will come growth. So we weave these values throughout everything we do. IOA is located in Manteno, Illinois. Manteno is 50 miles, or it takes about 60 minutes to get to downtown Chicago. There are about 9,200 people who live in Manteno, and IOA is located on the collar of the town. It's kind of a rural type setting. Our programs reside in cottages. So this is a picture of one of our cottages, and you can see in the background our transitional living program. We have 2 on site. We also have a vocational building on campus and a gymnasium. This is a typical group room for one of our cottages. Our program is made up of each program is made up of a team consisting of a clinical supervisor, a unit coordinator, a family therapist, a sexuality therapist, 3 case managers, and about 12 to 14 counselors or direct line staff. We do a 4-to-1 staff to client ratio during the day, and then at night on 3rd shift we do a 7-to-1 client to staff ratio. Indian Oaks Academy is a Tier 1 provider with a capacity of 117 kids, and again, ages 12 to 21. We here on site have 7 residential programs. Each program is comprised of about 16 to 17 youth. There are 3 female programs and 4 male programs. Our school is also privatized, and it is on site. So our kids live here and they go to school here. We also have a continuum of care of a girls' transitional living program and a boys' transitional living program. The typical referral base for Indian Oaks Academy is the Department of Children and Family Services, Department of Juvenile Justice. We get a few county referrals, and we usually average about a 10% out-of-state referral rate as well. We've taken kids from California, New Jersey, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Kentucky, Tennessee, Iowa, just a smattering of the states. We also have a redeploy program that works with youth in the community who are probation-based referrals. So, why is it important to create a safe place for LGBTQ youth? We all know the statistics, and they're not in favor of our LGBTQ youth. Whether it be these youth are bullied more frequently or rejected by their families or society, or the frequency of how often they experience violence, we know the stats aren't in favor of these kids. So what really stuck out for us was the suicide attempts versus the heterosexual counterparts. We know that suicide is the leading cause of death among gay kids. Oftentimes, the services for these youth the services that these youth need are difficult to find or don't even exist. This was our experience. So we had to create these services by building them from the ground up. And this is the journey I want to share with you today. Our executive director, Mike Shavers, he leads us with a philosophy of how will we, not will we. Therefore, we see most challenges in residential care as opportunities. So our first experience was about 10 years ago. We admitted our first intersex youth, and the youth came from an out-of-state referral, and the parents raised the youth as female. However, this youth consistently felt more male. established some pretty severe self-harming behaviors, and ended up coming into our care. We worked with this youth for 2.5 years and partnered with a teaching hospital in Chicago to learn that this youth had more male DNA, so we transitioned this youth successfully from going to living life as a female to a male. So then fast forward to 2010. We had an admission, a very high-profile case, a very complex case. So this youth came to us with an advocate of a caseworker like nobody's business. Upon admission, the worker came, brought the youth, and also handed us a 12-page DCFS policy that we were going to be held to. So we quickly learned how unprepared we were for this youth. We had very little experience working with such a youth and a caseworker, and we had few resources. We had always worked with a gay youth here and there, however, nothing like being challenged on a daily basis of what clothing was going to be acceptable, what pronoun was going to be used, what hairstyles were going to be accepted, what was the correct terminology or language. We knew if we were going to help this youth, we had to challenge our culture on campus and change it to become more accepting. This is what sent us on this journey. So the first thing we did was we did research on our own, and we quickly saw the changing culture at IOA could potentially push on employees' values, their beliefs, their religious beliefs, etc. So we knew we needed the blessings from our corporate office to pursue down this road that needed to be traveled. So Pat Rookie, our Nexus Vice President of Clinical Operations, encouraged us to make it happen. So we had corporate blessings behind us, and Pat ultimately became one of our biggest champions. So we knew at that point there's no stopping us. In 2009, I was fortunate enough to be chosen by Lambda Legal and CWLA to participate in their Train the Trainers for working with out-of-home youth. Therefore, I had a little bit of foundation to work from. As we researched the project, we found the practices were more about a ton of what should be done. You should create a warm and accepting environment. You should create an environment that's inclusive. You should be sensitive to sexual orientation. All should do, but there were very few. How do you do that? How do you create that warm and accepting environment? How do you be more sensitive? How do you be more inclusive of others? We didn't know how to do the shoulds, so we had to figure it out. And we realized how little research there was out there. So we used these 3 resources as our main foundation to build from. We ran across an article on the CWLA website, which CWLA, Child Welfare League of America. The article was Transforming Mainstream Environment for LGBTQ Youth in Residential Group Home Care. So this became our blueprint. Lambda Legal also has a wonderful Getting Down to Basics toolkit that we also adopted. And then True Colors was a wonderful resource for us as well. And they had a resource guide and an assessment tools for agencies and schools. So we dove into these 3 websites and soaked up as much information as we could. We quickly learned we had a lot of work to do to change the culture of our campus. I compare it to like turning the Titanic. Great big ship, small rudder. We had to move from tolerating to accepting and affirming. We knew we needed to shift the culture campus in order to therapeutically work with this youth. We learned from the research that around 10% of youth would identify as gay. However, when I was a clinical director at the time, and my 2 peers sat down and we discussed our client census, we quickly were able to identify over 20% of our youth who were in our care struggled with some thread of sexual orientation or LGBTQ issues. So we knew we needed a positive change but how? Most of our referrals, probably about 60% of them, come from DCFS, and DCFS has several different specialty teams. So we reached out and partnered with the DCFS LGBTQ liaison. She came to our campus and facilitated a training for our program, the one that this youth resided on, who was openly gay, and we observed staff present at the training, but really not engaging. We didn't see the level of participation that we knew we needed to create the change, so we knew we needed to do more. This is when we decided we would take on the training of our programs ourselves. Our goal was to create a resource list of the how-tos. How do you do this? To all the shoulds that we were arriving on. We had to take a temperature read. So in order to know where we needed to start from, we had to figure out where are we at? Where are staff's comfort zones? We also needed to take a temperature read of our youth. How accepting were the kids going to be of this culture change? We needed a survey tool that took the temperature read of our staff and our youth. And through this, we found ourselves at Illinois Safe School Alliance. And there we found a template of a survey that is used in schools that we could ultimately use for our staff and kids. We did have to tweak it a little bit, but we did it in a manner in which it was confidential for both staff and kids. And interestingly, we learned our youth were far more accepting of diversity than our staff. The youth were not bothered or uncomfortable with LGBTQ youth, but rather the thing that bothered our kids was when they saw a peer being bullied or picked on and staff didn't intervene. So we knew immediately that we had to give the staff the tools that they needed to safely intervene. So we needed to change these dynamics. So where do we go from here? How do we change a campus of 350 staff, the culture on campus? So the two peers, my two peers, clinical directors and I, decided to cast a net and see if there were any staff out there in our family here, our treatment family, that would like to support this culture change. So we sent an all-staff email asking for anybody who's interested to please come to this meeting over a lunch hour. My two peers and I had no idea if it would just be the three of us sitting in the room or if we'd have a couple of participants. Much to our surprise, in our large conference room that holds about 30 people, we had standing room only. We had 35 people that were interested to be a part of this group. So we decided we needed to take our group off campus and do a day-long retreat. Our goal of this day was to make it educational, experiential, and above all, safe. We were extremely mindful how we set the day up. Even though we all worked together and there wasn't a stranger in the room, we implemented an icebreaker that paralleled that of being a gay person. We asked each member of the group to share something that they would find in their refrigerator, and it was extremely interesting. Some staff shared multiple items about their family members and what foods they would find or what drinks they'd find. Others shared minimally to the point that you wouldn't even know if they lived with anybody else. So then after this icebreaker, we processed this experience as a group and equated it to how living as a gay person, if you don't feel safe, you might not use pronouns. You might not show up to work on a Monday and talk about your weekend. Or if you're a youth coming into care and you don't feel safe, you might not open up to some of the very core issues that you're feeling. So we knew, again, the experiential, the staff then learned. Throughout the day, we completed other learning labs, like the impact of silence and the values clarification piece. This became not only educational, but it was experiential for staff. So for a small moment, they could relate to how it felt to be gay. From this day, what we arrived at was Project Rainbow was born. We knew at that point that everything was up for review because we needed to change the culture on campus. So in order to do this, we knew we were going to need a needs assessment to see where we were at, and then we would share those results with staff and kids. The 3 items that we landed on were that we were going to focus on our priorities of policy and procedure, media, and train and education. So from our 35 core staff at the Project Rainbow Day retreat, we broke up into these 3 different subgroups. So for example, this is a boundary packet cover, and each of our programs have a boundary packet, and it outlines the different phases and privileges a youth can gain as they go through treatment. It's also, this boundary packet is a tool to enculturate youth and staff quickly so everybody is on the same page. So this, for example, is the front cover of one of our boundary packets. You can see our cornerstone values. In the icon or the branding, in our boundary packets, we knew that we needed to make some adjustments to the dress codes, the hair policy, our privilege system. We used to have a girls' dress code and a boys' dress code, for example. However, what happened if you had a male who wanted to dress in a feminine manner, or if you had a female who wanted to dress in a masculine manner? So we realized that clothes don't make the kid, so we came up with a universal dress code. So that way kids could express themselves in a safe way, but not have it gender specific. We looked at the pronouns that we gave the youth versus pronouns the youth wanted us to use, and we had to revisit our privilege system, because what if there was a male who wanted to wear fingernail polish or wear girls' clothing? We had to make our boundary packets more accepting. This is a picture of our Nexus Cornerstones. This is our branding. And by having corporate permission and approval, what they allowed us to do is take, this picture here is a foyer. When you come into it's the foyer coming into our main office, and you'll see in the center there that the corporate office allowed us to take our branding and cornerstones and put pride colors through them, and then with an overlayment of IOA is a safe place for everyone. And this became our campaign with Project Rainbow. This allowed us to increase our visibility for LGBTQ youth. We have these frames and posters in our HR department, our training department. Every cottage has a minimum of 1. Our therapist office has this picture. Our school. They're really sprinkled throughout our campus. And it sends the message that we wanted to create, that we are a safe place. This, for example, is the office door going into our training supervisor's office. It's just a subtle window cling, but it says that we welcome diversity. Regarding training, one of the things that we did was we incorporated what we call a fish out of water training. We facilitate this training in our weekly team meetings and made the training educational and experiential and safe. So every staff had the same training. We started the conversation and made it safe for any comments to be made or questions to be asked. We did the learning labs with the staff. If only for a moment they could briefly feel what it was like to be gay. The staff connected the importance of making our milieu a safer place for LGBTQ youth. Here, it's not uncommon to see a bulletin board such as this that has an ally sticker or a pride-colored bear sitting on a bookshelf. Again, it just is that subtle hint of we're a safe place. We've certainly come a long way, because historically you wouldn't have seen those things. These pride color wristbands say on them, IOA is a safe place for everyone. You will see staff wearing these wristbands, hanging the wristbands off their computer screens. You might see them on their ID lanyards. They're really throughout campus. So we took our fish out of water training and incorporated it into our new employee orientation training. So within the first week of a new staff's employment at IOA, they learn and hear how important it is to be inclusive of diversity and our values around it. We offer the wristbands during this training to new employee orientation, and we let them, if they'd like to take one or two, they can, and if they're not comfortable, that's okay too. But then they hear from the beginning of their employment our expectations and our values. So throughout our efforts of Project Rainbow and this youth from that came to us in 2010, what we saw was an increase in LGBTQ referrals. We were approached by DCFS and asked if we would be willing to work with transgendered youth. Remember, Mike leads us in a manner of not will we, but how will we? So we instantly said, yes, we will. So to date, we have worked with 4 transgendered youth successfully. We are now placing youth on the program that the youth identifies as their gender rather than their gender specific at birth, that they were assigned with at birth. People were concerned, well, how are you going to keep the girls from getting pregnant? It really wasn't an issue. If our kids go on run and become sexually active, they'll become sexually active. However, the kids that were placed on these programs, it wasn't an issue. They were thrilled to be honored in the gender that they identify as. So now, that's what we do. Looking back, one of the lessons that we learned was with our first transgendered youth, we prepared the program staff very well. We sent them through training. We prepared the kids. We had a full family group with the kids and did an excellent job of preparing the program. But one of the things that we didn't do so well is we didn't prepare the campus. So if there was an all-staff assistance call made to this program, or if somebody picked up an overtime shift, we realized that those other staff they weren't equipped with the same tools that the program staff had. So one of the things that we had to do was go back and prepare the campus for transgendered kids. There once was a time when we struggled using pronouns, and now today, Indian Oaks Academy, we really meet the kids where each individual is at, and we no longer struggle with the use of pronouns. We realized as we created this safe place for our kids, then what became cumbersome was discharge, because we saw the transformation with our kids, and then when they were ready for discharge, we realized that they didn't have that safe place to go to. So as an agency, what we have done is extended ourselves out to help others learn, and we train others. We take our fish out of water training. We bring our wristbands to help create that safe place for our kids. One of our staff suggested that we have just a gay unit or a gay program, and Mike said absolutely not, that this isn't about segregation, but it's about inclusion. So we really include our kids in our programs, and we meet them where they're at. Like I said earlier, IOA is a very transparent agency. So the tools that we created, the survey, or our fish out of water training, or some of the pride things that we've implemented on campus, we are more than willing to share those, because we realize those pieces were the pieces that were instrumental in us turning the Titanic and changing the culture here at campus to now one of being very accepting, very affirming, very inclusive of diversity. We gave staff the right to know that this is going to push on their values or religious values or beliefs, and we allowed them the safe space to voice that concern with us, and they really are here about the mission. So even though very few of them had a dissenting opinion about this, they said we're here for the kids. And now our kids are just flourishing. It's a safe place. We've really kind of put ourselves on the map in the state of Illinois of working with gay youth. So as I said earlier, we're very transparent. Bill, is there any questions or anything that I could answer?
Well, first of all, Mary Ann, thank you for sharing your journey. And I do have a few questions, and if folks on the call have any questions, please send them in. Can you just tell us what a Tier 1 means
Sure.
in Illinois?
Yep, we are Medicaid funded, and so every year we go through audits, and there's certain criteria that we have to meet. And to be a Tier 1 facility, you have to have a score of 96 or better, and so we accomplished that by all the criteria. We are also COA, Council of Accreditation, confirmed, but that's what that is. It's a Medicaid standing, and very few residential treatment facilities accomplish that.
Okay, thanks. And can you talk a little bit about, along the journey, any bumps in the road that happened with staff around it, issues that occurred, and accountability, and how you managed those?
Yeah. Yeah, and we did. We're not perfect by any means. I know when we took our first transgendered youth, we had a supervisor who made a very derogatory comment in front of other staff, and we had to set the standard in the line that this is not acceptable, because once you allow one comment, then you say that that's okay. So that staff person was disciplined pretty harsh for that, because the derogatory comments can't be acceptable. There were a few people that, as we went to each team meeting with our fish out of water training, that they were very much against, and they were very vocal about their beliefs, their religious beliefs. They didn't feel that it was right, and what we did was we allowed them that safe place, that's okay. It's okay that you feel that. It's okay that you think that. We are here to do a job. We've agreed to live the mission. So they were able to set their their beliefs aside to work with the kids, and it really has become, over time, it's really no longer even an issue. We really accept our kids and the diversity, and in whatever fashion or flair that they give us.
Did you change along the way performance evaluations, hiring, promoting practices at all to align with the change?
Nexus is a very progressive company. We offer domestic partnerships, and so by changing the culture on campus for our youth, what that did was create a different culture for our staff to come out. And what we're working on now is a wall of courage for staff and kids who are willing to come out. So it had a byproduct or a parallel process. As we were making campus safe for our gay kids, it made it also very safe for our gay staff. And that was really kind of an unexpected but very neat byproduct to see, that acceptance and inclusion. We had one employee who, upon his interview, was told by the supervisor to not speak of his sexual orientation, to not talk about it, and he happened to be one of the members that was at the day-long retreat where Project Rainbow was birthed. And I was startled to hear what he went through on the interview process. And today, so as he became more comfortable, and as the environment in which we work in became more accepting, he has been a huge advocate and helping our kids, because he's open about his sexual orientation. He maintains his professionalism and his boundaries. However, he's able to be who he is, and that is just one small example of how it has created a safer place for our kids, because now our kids use this staff member as an example And so yeah, we did have bumps, but if we're going to create a safe place for our kids, it had to be a safe place for our staff as well.
Okay. Another question that came in is, do you ever find that youth experience the safe space concept as meaning that elsewhere is not safe, and so create anxiety? A person noted that they've worried about safe zones created in a jurisdiction they work in.
Yep. We did. We actually found, sometimes as our kids come into treatment, they hate being here, and then once they start to do treatment and they engage, and that they hate leaving more. And what we realized then, as our gay kids started to discharge or identify their step-down placement, oftentimes there isn't the accepting community that they're going to. And the way we approach that is, that's kind of life. There are places that we all feel more comfortable with, or that we blend better, or that, you know what, I'm not comfortable, and my sixth sense tells me I really need to be a little bit more guarded. And so what we did was incorporate that in our youth treatment, that is just the reality of life, that there are places you can go and blend and be accepting, and then there's places where you have to be a little bit more conservative. You have to be guarded. You have to keep yourself safe, safety first. We've taken some of our LGBTQ kids up to Halsted Street in Chicago on the north side, and they've attended some groups at the center up there. And they could see the type of environment and the gay pride signs and the streets and everything that the north side brings with it. That was educational for our kids to see, and that bill is just the reality. And so that's how we wove that into treatment.
Okay. And can you talk a little bit about the community you reside in and how you've connected with the community at all?
Yep. We are, like I say, we're about 60 minutes south of Chicago. We're in a rural town. There's about 9,000 people in our town, and Indian Oaks is on the collar of it. We're out in the township. So on one side we have homes, on the other side of our facility is cornfields. We're about 12 miles away from a larger town, Kankakee, Urban A, Bradley. And our kids kind of like stand out because there's not a whole lot of diversity. We're probably a pretty Caucasian type community, rural. And so what we've done with our kids, again, is be sensitive to them. We've taken them to different communities where they feel more comfortable. Oftentimes our kids will ask us to put our lanyards away so that they don't identify, or other people don't identify that we're from Indian Oaks Academy. We don't have post bumper stickers on our vehicles. We really try to adapt our kids into the community. The community has accepted us and our kids. They've really been good partners with us, but we've also taught our kids, part of the give back to the community is to be good partners with them. So our kids work for Habitat for Humanity. They work at the local food shelter serving meals. We try to give them as much community exposure as safely possible.
I guess last question I have for you is, do you feel like everything that you've done, which is really amazing, I think, has put you in a place that this will sustain beyond your being there or Mike being there?
Yes, it is part of our culture. And we're not, the journey isn't over. It continues to evolve. We have been asked, like there was one youth who was on run, and DCFS reached out to us and said, can you help us? And if we can secure the youth, can we bring them to you? And the youth was struggling, looking for street hormones, and wouldn't stay in residential treatment. The longest length of stay that youth had was 7 days. And when we took the youth in and placed this youth on the gender-specific program that the youth identified and was accepted to be who this person felt that she was, then she did amazing work and successfully completed treatment in 10 months. The staff, you know, I was kind of behind the initial synergy and getting the ball rolling and preparing staff, and now it's like a part of who we are. And like I say, at one point we struggled with pronouns, and so how do you take a youth that's born biologically one sex but identifies with the other sex, and what does documentation look like, and how can you legally write that and have Medicaid approve? And we had to tease all those processes out, and we've been able to do that successfully. There's a passion behind it. There's a pride behind it. Staff now, sometimes we don't realize how far we come until we're in a meeting or we're in an external meeting where somebody will say that they're having a meeting and their team can't yet agree on how to use a pronoun or what pronoun. And our philosophy around that is like, look, it's a word. Let's not get caught up in a word. Let's do what's right for this youth. And there has to be some clinical components, of course, behind it, but we no longer get caught up in that. And then, like with our transgendered kids, what we found out was that some of the staff didn't know what terminology to use, and if this youth is born biologically a male and feels more female, and what do I say, how do I refer to him or her? And at the end of the day, where we landed with our staff is you treat that person just like you'd want to be treated. That we're not going to get caught up in that. We need to be sensitive. We need to be educated on, how do we appropriately talk about trans male or trans female. One of the things that we've run into is with our kids is that our medical director will not prescribe hormones because of the youth's age. So what we've done in cases like that, with our transgendered youth, we have partnered with the University of Illinois, and there's different universities that actually will give money towards transition surgeries. So we will tell the youth and help the youth say, look, you've got to be college bound, and this starts in the classroom. We've also then identified the prescriptions before somebody transitions and help the transgendered kids learn about that and educate themselves about that. So again, very progressive, and we kind of smile and we think back oh my goodness, when this youth came, we were really tore up and we really knew we had to change the culture. And when you have a campus of 350 staff, it felt like we had to turn the Titanic. And so when we cast the net and we saw that there were champions that were just ready to embrace this, it really just caught like wildfire. And so now it is, Bill, it's part of a culture. People really just accept it and really don't think anything about it, which we're thrilled.
Well, thank you so much, Mary Ann. This has been very informative, and I appreciate your taking the time and putting everything together to share the work. It sounds like it's not a Titanic, it's a ship that's moving forward. So I appreciate it. And this is recorded. As we've said, we'll be sending out the link of the recorded webinar to share with others and also posting it on our website. So thanks, everyone, and thank you again, Mary Ann.
Thank you, Bill.